Welcome to the Business Insights Festival, an online festival examining the topical issues affecting companies and the business world, sharing ideas, expertise and support. The Climate and Sustainability Forum is a regular feature of the festival and takes an in-depth look at the overlap of sustainability and the corporate sector. During the forum today, we're going to be examining what has sustainability ever done for business. Sustainability has shot up the political agenda and the public's priority list in the past year. Even before the pandemic hit, more and more companies were looking at how they could incorporate sustainability into how they work. However, many of these were large companies with the resources to do so. 91% of businesses in the UK are small and micro businesses with an overflowing to-do list. So is it really realistic to expect them to become guardians of the planet as well? I'm Chair today, and I'm Caroline Astrop of Green Spark Marketing, Sustainability Storytelling Specialist. We help businesses to future-proof their business and future-proof the planet, not by telling them how to be sustainable, but by helping them to tell the rest of the world about how they are being sustainable and turn their green commitments and activities into inspiring PR that give them a marketing advantage and encourage others to do the same. And I'm very pleased to welcome my 5 panelists for today who will be examining what sustainability has done for their business. And they are Nick Hounsfield, founder of The Wave, an inland surfing destination that was born out of a passion for technology, nature and human health. At its heart is an unbelievable surfing lake with perfect waves set in incredible green space. Kirsty Green-Mann is the head of corporate sustainability at Burgess Salmon, an independent commercial UK law firm named UK Law Firm of the Year 2020, headquartered in Bristol with additional offices in London, Edinburgh and Dublin. Burgess Salmon competes at the top of the legal market, delivering a variety of high-value solutions for clients. The firm is comprised of some 800 people across legal and business services and generates a revenue in excess of £105 million per annum. Helen McGloin is Head of Advancement for the Pie House. From small beginnings making sausage rolls and pasties to in the home kitchen for local country markets, the Pie House at Cinder Hill Farm is now a nationally stocked manufacturer of outstanding quality, handmade, ready-to-eat foods for retail, consumer and high-value food service outlets. This SME has a heart for the people, the land and the wider community in which it operates, with particular emphasis on environmental practices. Barry Wyatt is Climate Emergency Manager at South Gloucestershire Council, a Conservative-led unitary authority to the north of Bristol and part of the West of England Combined Authority. It declared a climate emergency at the end of 2019, and our aim is to become carbon neutral across the estate and all functions by 2030. They have actively reduced their carbon emissions since 2009, reflecting a long record of action on climate change. Total greenhouse gas emissions in 2019 to 20 have decreased by 18% since the previous year and 69% since the base year of 2009 to 10. And my final contributor to the panel is John Bradbury, Continuous Improvement Manager for Amcor. Amcor is a global leader in developing and producing responsible packaging for food, beverage, pharmaceutical, medical, home and personal care, plus many other products. The site in Winterbourne, Bristol, produces pharmaceutical medical packaging for a range of different applications, from syringes to tablets. So Kirsty, can I turn to you first? A legal practice might not seem an obvious company to think about sustainability, yet Burgess Salmon is undertaking a whole range of activities to introduce it into the way it operates. What for the company was the motivation behind doing this?
Yeah, sure, Caroline. So I think at Burgess Salmon, it's really part of the culture, and it sort of builds on a long history and heritage of the sort of company being involved in the local community and sort of wanting to do the right thing really at the core of the business. Operating to high standards and being part of a leading law firm, you know, it's really important to address sustainability. I think we're very fortunate as well that our senior partner, our managing partner, they really understand the sustainability challenges we face, and that, you know, it's important for businesses to play their role and take action. We also know it's really important to our people as well, and that's fed back to us through our internal networks and our engagement surveys. And in the legal sector, it's really competitive to attract and retain talent, so it's important from that perspective as well. And more recently, as you alluded to, clients are becoming more demanding as well. So it's important in terms of our service offering too.
Great. Nick, I mean, the Wave, by contrast, included the sustainability ethos right from the word go, from as soon as you started developing the venue. You know, what was the reason for you for doing that?
I'll unmute. I guess it's very lucky that it's something that is very dear to myself, really important for me in the way that I live my life. And because I was the founder of the company, it was pretty straightforward to be able to implement that. It was the very first thing that we looked at is let's create a business business plan that has got sustainability in its DNA. And that was because I surrounded myself with really good people who also believed how important it is as a business, and tried to embed it before we even went out to get our initial investment, so that then there was a very clear number of red lines in terms of who we would attract from investment, and also the way that we want to run as a business. Looking at, of course, we have to look at 1-year business models and 3-year plans and all the rest of it, but actually I want to really subscribe to that 1,000-year business model of what impact are we going to create as a legacy, and actually it's good Burgess Salmon are here as well. We got very early backing from Burgess Salmon to help us with that, and I think part of that was because we had that sustainability principles embedded initially. And there was a very, very clear match-up, and it's been incredibly helpful over these last 10 years to get this place up and running.
Yeah, great. John, packaging has definitely become the eco bad guy in recent times, especially plastic packaging. So how has sustainability been incorporated into your business, which people might, from the outside, think is contradictory?
Yeah, sure. So Amcor, where we've got a vision of by 2025 making all our packaging both either recyclable or reusable. This is part of the ethos that we've been working on, and we're investing quite a lot in R&D, new technology, ways of recycling that packaging, because it is essential for different things and other forms of sustainability as well. And in the current climate, medical needs especially. At my site in Winterbourne, we produce quite a lot of medical packaging, and that has some very strict rules and regulations about what it needs to be and the integrity of what it needs to be as well. So we've definitely pursuing what we can do in terms of making all our packaging the most recyclable and eco-friendly it can be. But then we also, as part of our ethos and business sense, look at what we can do to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, reduce our waste, and do what we can to make sure that we're a sustainable business and we'll be here for the longer term.
Now, did the company exist previously before the sustainability became really to the fore? So presumably it started off by producing just straightforward packaging. So has it made a conscious switch then to say we want to try and get to that sustainable level?
Yeah. So we existed as a conglomerate for quite a number of years. And it was 2018 is when we announced our pledge. So it had already existed for at least 10 years as Amcor as its entity, but previous iterations of the company as well obviously existed beforehand. And that's where we made the conscious effort to switch what we can for that 2025 pledge.
Yeah, great. Helen, now then, as a family business and farm, the pie house must feel the pressure the most from tight profit margins and overflowing to-do lists. So why did you put sustainability as yet another thing onto those overflowing to-do lists?
I think actually it's the heart of why the business exists. We are based in the most beautiful area of the world. We can be biased about that, I think, being in the Wye Valley. You only have to look out of the office door to know there's something that there is really to protect, and that we have a duty to do it. From the beginning, the ethos of the company has looked to create exceptionally high quality food products, but that doesn't have to be at the cost of the earth. And yes, there's obviously a lot of strains on a very small company. But there's also a flexibility that we have that others might not do to try things and to work on smaller scales. And it allows us to do that as a starting point, and we really hope to lead the way in this area, to show what businesses can do, even in small steps, little things that you can do. But it covers all actions of every area, from growing the meat that we use in our products, all the way up to looking at how we package them, how we get them to our customers. It really covers everything, and we have a chance to look at it all because we are so small.
So a bit like Nick, it was a subject that you were quite passionate about beforehand.
Absolutely, yes.
Your business, so you saw a way of incorporating the two when your business started to develop.
Yes, definitely. I don't think we would have the customers that we do in terms of the retail that we sell to. The reason we're able to sell to them is because we are an eco farm, and it is because we take those actions. We just wouldn't have the product that we do unless it had this foundation of sustainability.
Great. Now, Barry, councils, you're from South Gloucestershire Council, and councils are organisations that the public really expect to be concerned about the bottom line and giving great value for money, yet your job is focused purely on the climate emergency. So how do you square that circle, particularly at the moment, as you know, we're expecting there to be a lot of cuts to pay for the pandemic around, particularly in the public service sector?
Yeah, sorry, you're breaking up a bit then. I think it is a really challenging moment in time, and everybody's talking quite extensively about a green recovery and what does a green recovery look like and what's the role in local government in leading that green recovery. And I think we're well placed to try to shape that up. So it's not necessarily a financial burden, but we're trying to present it as a way in which it's a financial opportunity. But there's a lot of work to be done in actually setting the foundations to show it is that financial opportunity which everybody is talking about. You know, within local government generally, it's definitely been a long and winding path to get to this point, where there's no statutory expectation that local government, from a kind of an emissions point of view, has any targets or standards to meet. So it's been a fairly treacherous and, as I say, winding journey to get to where we are. But as an organisation, you know, we're part way through almost a systemic review of everything that we do to support sustainability. So whether it's the council plan, having climate emergency as a key theme, leading down into its procurement strategy, so businesses that we choose to place our services with, making sure that their climate emergency or green credentials are where they should be. So it really is that kind of service by service tool that we're all pulling in the same direction. We call it a bit of a kind of getting a grip. So getting a grip is a meaning by which all the different elements of the council need to be aligned in actually delivering against that declared climate emergency in everything that we do. And I would say it's not the finished article yet. It's definitely, we're in transition. And part of that transition is, as we come out of the pandemic, making sure that we're supporting through policies, through our procurement decisions, through support for businesses, to make sure that they can capitalise on those green opportunities.
Yeah, so the drive for this, was that from councillors? Was it from the officers in the council? Both? Your public?
I would say all of that, and we've seen that transition in terms of back in the early 2000s. It was just a couple of green geeks who were employed by councils generally where the responsibility lay. But I think this time round we've seen the Paris Agreement, Extinction Rebellion, declarations of climate emergencies. And so corporately it's been identified as a significant risk that we need to be shown that we've got a substantial and effective response to. So I think definitely, you know, having been around it in various phases, this phase is very different from previous phase. It seems to be really embedded in the organisation, having that reach into every service. And as I say, it's definitely a work in progress, and I wouldn't like to say that we've actually got the finished article yet. As we go through that transition, we make sure all our policies and strategies are aligned under that corporate council vision.
Now, as I alluded to in the introduction, you know, there are still many companies who have this perception of sustainability, not quite sure what it is. I know I spoke a couple of months ago to the head of a company who based here in Gloucestershire, where I am, and sort of said, phoned me and went, okay, I want to make the company sustainable. I want to make this sustainable. Nobody else in my sector is doing this. I want to make it sustainable. You know, great, yeah. And they went, so what is sustainability? And I think there still tends to be that view. And I read an article in the Financial Times just recently. It was reporting about a survey, and it was saying that only 4% of directors at the board level actually understand this sustainability, understand the climate emergency. So there's still quite a mismatch between the two, and this perception that, oh, you know, it's costly and it's onerous. You know, Nick, let's be honest, what were the difficulties you found when you were trying to embrace sustainability in the development of the wave?
I guess from my perspective, it's around making sure that you really understand the compromises that need to come about through looking at things through a sustainable lens. You know, I think for us to build the wave, it was near on £30 million raised to be able to make this whole place be built and function. I think if we were to create the most perfectly sustainable place, it probably would cost about, well, probably 70, 80 million to do. So there's compromise along the way. And it's being realistic. I think actually in also not trying to be completely perfect. And actually there's probably this ticks your boxes. The storytelling along the way is actually just as important, if not more important, than trying to be perfect from the start. As soon as you're perfect from the start, you're there to be shot down. And I really think that the narrative and bringing people and bringing the staff, bringing the investment community, our shareholders along that journey and go, this is the areas that we've had to compromise on. However, future-proofing our operations, future-proofing the whole site so that we can improve along the way and take you on that journey for improvement together is actually far more important, I think, because it's far more realistic. It probably will allow people to have a connection and be able to improve themselves back then into their own homes. Go, actually, the wave's doing some pretty cool things. I'm going to take some of those principles home and run our home life through that. And I think that that's a really important conversation, and that's the way you can start to change hearts and minds around that whole sustainability discussion.
Yeah, I'm really pleased. Yes, it does really make me pleased to hear you talk about the need, the importance for the storytelling part of it, right from the word go, because that's an area that most companies fall down on. As a PR person, they usually come to me and go, right, oh, here's the finished thing. Now can you publicise it for us? And I was just thinking, I've just lost so many opportunities to get so much traction. And as you say, get people along with the journey. I don't know if any of you remember the development of the Eden project back in the 1990s. They did a fantastic job of telling that story. And I was one of those people who actually paid to go and see the building site.
Same here.
They've done such a good job of actually creating that story that had raised the enthusiasm for the whole project. That there were thousands of people like me who actually went to paid to go and stand on a balcony and look at a big pit in the ground where they're going, well, that's going to be the tropical zone and that's going to be the Mediterranean zone. So important.
And actually, on that note, the very, very first person I spoke to around building the wave, wanting to do it, was Tim Smith, the founder of the Eden Project. And he said, I can't get involved in this because I'm really, really busy, but I'm going to introduce you to a guy called Chris Hines, who was the founder of Surfers Against Sewage, but also was sustainability director for Eden Project. And he was the very first person I had a proper meeting with. And that's then when we set up the sort of idea of what would a sustainable business look like going forwards. And that started the whole thing. And actually Gaynor Coley, who is our chairwoman, is used to be CEO of Eden Project. So that, you know, that whole vibe is very much wrapped up into the DNA of our project as well. So it's interesting to mention that.
Yeah, so you resisted the urge to sort of encourage people to come and see your building site while it's being developed.
Well, we did actually, but we got lots of school kids in actually to come in and see, yeah, how you would construct something like this, because it was a real feat to get it constructed, and it was great to bring them on the journey and be able to look at the fabric of the buildings and understand why we've made certain choices and certain decisions.
Yeah, great. Helen, for you, when you were developing your business as well, how did you embrace that sustainability thing? Did you have certain criteria, which, as Nick has alluded to, sometimes you can't be perfect with sustainability, particularly around the food industry, because you must have so many legislative things you have to adhere to. Yeah. Did you say, right, okay, this is going to be our criteria for how we decide when we want to be really sustainable and when we can't be, or when we decide we can't be?
I think that's an interesting question. The food industry obviously has a lot of regulation, and there's a lot of requirements for what we must do in order to meet those standards. I don't think ever, to start with, it's a conscious decision of is there any criteria. It's much more organic. Being a small business, it has grown from an idea to something that we are able to sell across the country. From my point of view, I've been part of the business for 9 months now. I've got an engineering background, and I think coming in to be able to bring a different perspective and actually probably slightly more criteria and spreadsheets, that's something I do very much love in order to understand where we should be spending our time. But it's the heart of everything we do. So to be able to see opportunities around us and to see that we have to constantly look for new ways. So an example linked to obviously one of our other speakers is the packaging. We're constantly looking for compostable packaging, which we know exists. You've probably seen it for food, and we need it in clear plastic. But as soon as you put it in a freezer or a fridge for 12 days, it goes mushy. And unfortunately, we can't have that with a food product, that we need to meet certain shelf life. But we do see opportunities where we can use compostable packaging, and where we have had success in that, where we don't need it to be a fully clear packaging, because we've sold things, for example, online. They're not looking at a shelf. So we have to, I think I said before, flexibility is really important. And as I said, but also a heart to understand what more we can always do. I don't think we've ever stopped looking for improvements. As I said, I've come in as a new role, so head of advancement. That's to look at both manufacturing improvements, site improvements, anything that can take us this next step, really to fully combine environmental aspects within everything that we do.
And would you say that sustainability has held the company back in any way? Has it sort of been a disadvantage in some respect?
I don't know. I would say no. There's times when maybe, like for example, that packaging example, we really want to be able to change, but the technology is out there. And as I said, as an engineer, I understand that, you know, if it's not there, we can't make our own packaging especially for this. So it is frustrating that some of the things we would like to do maybe less accessible, especially to small businesses. I know you mentioned at the start, you know, large companies, if you're Coca-Cola, you can do huge campaigns related to how you're managing your plastic. That's not within something we have that we can do. But what we can do is work directly with our clients, so the companies that who sell our products, and we can work with them to work out solutions that best suit them. So maybe it's opening up deli counters and selling there where we can have no packaging, as well as our kind of on the go, off the shelf products as well. So it is, I think it is always going to be a challenge for a small company. Funding is obviously a really big thing. We'd love to be able to get electric vans to be able to deliver products in, but the cost of those are huge, and there isn't the access via the government yet for grants that would really help us take those steps. So there's a huge wish list of things we would love to be able to do. We're just going to have to be patient to when we can bring those in.
Yeah, picking up on the packaging theme again, John. I mean, for Amcor, again, obviously, as you said, that Amcor did exist beforehand. It was a successful company and was producing packaging beforehand and is now switching. Has Amcor found that embracing that sustainability element has, again, held it back in some way? Has it been difficult to meet the legislation that you must have to meet?
We found it's been quite sort of, it's one of those things that everyone's looking into now. So we haven't found it's held us back at all, but we're finding it's trying to figure out how we can engage our supply chain, not only our customers, but the onward supply chain as well, and making that fully recyclable dream a reality. So that's probably been the challenge for us on that one. But that's sort of one of those things that we're working on consistently to improve. But getting back to sort of similar of Helen's points, we don't ever stop looking for these improvements either. I'm an engineer as well. It might be a common trait. Got spreadsheets, you know, the cost benefit analysis, and you're trying to figure out what's the best investment at whatever particular time. Whether that's focusing on how we reduce our inline waste, what things we can do to make new sustainable packaging, and also looking at things such as energy generation. It's a huge cost to us, as well as one of our sustainability levers. I'm lucky enough, just above me, which causes some mobile reception issues, is we've got one of the largest solar arrays on the roof in a factory in Europe, which is great. And then we always wanted to look at what we can do to expand that as well. So we're always looking, always trying to find different ways and different levers to improve.
Yeah, and do you find that the work that you do, I mean, is it bringing you opportunities to work in partnership with other companies or work with your suppliers?
We work more with our customers. We're doing some development in terms of pharmaceuticals at the moment, in terms of what we can do to make that packaging recyclable. But that isn't a short-term sort of process with the pharmaceutical industry, and especially long journey in our in research and development to make sure whatever packaging we put things into has the appropriate shelf life or barrier properties to be able to preserve and make sure we don't introduce any other risks. So we're working with our customers and with our suppliers quite well, and we're quite lucky, I think, that everyone's on the same journey.
That's great to hear. How about the financial director? Because often the real decision making is in the finance department and stocks the director of finances, and they look at the spreadsheets for, you know, how's this? They look a year ahead maybe, or 2 years, whereas you mentioned research and development, and that can be years ahead. You know, how does that all work for your company?
So from a financial sort of perspective, it is very, we are very controlled in terms of what we can do. And that's where the cost benefit analysis comes in. You might not only be looking things from a sustainability angle, but a sort of an efficiency angle or a differential element. The site here in Winterbourne, we're lucky enough to have some really good investment in the last few years. And we've invested in technology that will only give us the capability to produce more sustainable products, but also make it with lower energy and lower waste. So when you mix those things together in the pot, it makes good business sense as well as financial sense to do those things. But you've got to find that balance of, you know, we can go and put, like you said, electric cars everywhere, but we've got to find the right balance of how good, what is the best lever at the time, and what makes the most sense to the business.
Kirsty, as Burgess Salmon as a law firm, and obviously more around services and closer contact with your customers and more sort of like admin paper-based services maybe than say John or Helen or Nick. Have you found any particular difficulties for Burgess Salmon embracing sustainability?
I think for us, so I suppose maybe start with the definition of sustainability. So probably simply it's getting a balance between generating profit while respecting people and the planet. And I think as the agenda's evolved, it's helping people understand the breadth of the agenda and how things interconnect and sort of joining up the dots. So there's been a challenge in sort of transitioning and understanding away from, you know, sort of volunteering and community to being a much more sophisticated agenda. I think there's some challenges around sort of setting meaningful KPIs, and therefore how do you also set really meaningful, ambitious targets? Also as well, I think there can also be a reluctance when performance isn't so good to be, prepared to disclose that. And obviously when you do disclose and things, that helps drive the continuous improvement. Another challenge we're kind of seeing, because we've done a lot on the sustainability agenda, we're kind of reaching a point where it's difficult to see what can we do next. So for example, we're now embarking on science-based targets, and where we've sort of got our direct impacts, we've done a huge amount. So it's, in achieving things like net zero, that's going to be a real challenge. There can also be some challenges as well. There are some individuals who kind of see it as not the real core business, and therefore can be, reluctant to change, and some of the behaviour changes that needs to be. A real hot potato in an office is sort of removal of waste paper baskets and those sort of things, so you can get some resistance there. So I think they're probably some of the key challenges that we've faced.
Yeah, but has the company overall found it's held it back in any way?
No, because this is really about planning for success over the longer term, and it's recognizing the challenges that we're facing environmentally and the inequalities, and I think there's a real advantage to be made. So we have integrated the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and this is really a roadmap in terms of what we need to do globally to be successful given population growth, climate change. But there's also a commercial incentive there, because that's really an indication of what's the world going to need more of and less of. So if you align your business services and what you've got on offer, so for example, Burgess Salmon has been really successful because we've got a lot of expertise in the renewable energy sector around net zero. And of course, this is a massive boom market now, so there's some real advantages to be had.
Yeah. Barry, council, obviously, a bit of a different situation to the other panellists. You cover such a range of services, from collecting our rubbish to dealing with, I don't know if South Gloucestershire Council has actually got any council houses and tenants, but, parks, dog mess, you cover such a range. How have you managed? I mean, has sustainability been difficult to introduce into all those different aspects?
Everyone always seems to mention dog mess for some reason. Councils do other things. A friend of mine, he said he was elected as district councillor, and he said in the first 6 months the things he dealt most with was dog mess. Yeah. It is very much a doorstep issue. The agenda is bonkersly big, and I guess how I conceptualise it is the council is kind of divided into its operational emissions in terms of how it runs the building and generates its own energy or buys its own energy versus the services it provides. And they're very much kind of with different approaches in terms of the council's internal system, how it manages that internal ecosystem. And this is where language becomes a bit of a barrier. We're focused on greenhouse gas protocol and our scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, and that's probably complete gobbledygook to a whole range of people. So that storytelling bit is probably where it starts, and then it actually moves into the mechanics of actually how you measure carbon from your own operational emissions, how you measure carbon from your supply chains, how you look at those life cycle emissions from everything that you do. So whether it's collecting curbside recyclates to actually the final destination in terms of the disposal of the residual waste, understanding life cycle emissions associated with all the component parts of our business. And it is technical, and there's no denying that, and often the technical side gets in the way of that storytelling. We become obsessed with understanding life cycle emissions in your scope 1, 2s and 3s, and what's a 1 and a 2 and what's a 3, and how far up the supply chain do you actually go in terms of monitoring your scope 3 emissions. But it is still a necessary part, and I think once you overcome that internal hurdle of enough members of the teams understanding how you manage and monitor carbon and life cycle emissions, then you start to make progress. And it's about building that internal knowledge and that capability so they can look through the lens of carbon, look through the lens of emissions. And a big thing which is running up on the outside, it's not just about mitigation, so stuff that we're doing to reduce our carbon emissions. It's about the adaptation agenda, and that's the scary bit that the council's starting to get its head around in terms of what changes to services do we need to provide in order to get ourselves ready for the inevitable consequences of climate change. And that's really understanding that we're probably not likely to hit 1.5 degrees, unlikely to hit 2 degrees, we're probably somewhere between 2 and 5 degrees. So what does that mean for us as a council operating, but also how we support our communities in that very different climate that is going to be upon us fairly quickly. And that's the scary bit. And so we're almost in a state of transition, not just having been through the mitigation curve, but now we're getting into the adaptation curve. And once again, I've automatically, as a council officer, flipped into using language and technical terms, which is probably a turn-off to a whole load of people that we're trying to communicate with. So it's actually how you actually present those arguments or those discussions and those metrics in a way that actually makes sense to people is a significant challenge.
For me, one of the big differences between you and the council and our other panellists is that you very much have your income set for you by an external body, the government. Whereas obviously our other panellists working for private companies have got more control over what they charge customers and their income generation. So how does the council, if you come across this problem of like, well, the bottom line is to fund our budget, how do you make those decisions between, well, we want to be sustainable and do the best we can, but we have to also balance that budget? Have you got a formula or ways, criteria that you use for how to judge how far to go to the level?
I think John mentioned the point in terms of kind of business case development, in that it's not just looking at carbon, it's looking at the savings that you can make from an investment. Street lights is the classic, isn't it? Burning a shed load of energy constantly and actually doing the business case to justify tearing down all the old street light heads and replacing them with LEDs. And that's almost a no-brainer. And I think the surprise when you go through those kind of arguments is actually how quick the payback will be. And then so everything that we're doing hasn't just got a strong carbon business case, it's got a commercial business case attached to it. And if you know your data, and going back to those kind of scope 1 and 2 emissions, understanding your consumption of energy, understanding your consumption of gas, understanding where in the day that's consumed, and if you analyse that data effectively enough, it leads to those solutions which are both saving you a shed load of carbon, but also generating or deferring payment for excessive energy bills. So if you know your data, you can actually quite quickly come up with a series of low-hanging fruit options, which both save carbon and save you money or make you money. And I think that's the kind of transition of building up that evidence base and that corporate understanding and corporate knowledge, that you can come up with those optimum solutions if you understand your data.
Right. John, just coming over to you a bit, what has been the response from your customers to your greener credentials?
A lot of them are embracing it, but a lot of our customers, especially the site of Winterbourne, like I was saying earlier, are medical and pharma customers. So for them, it's about taking them through that journey with us, about how we take the products that they've known for years and years and years and start to make sure that they can be part of a life cycle that can be recycled. Whether that's looking at how we can recycle the current products or how can we invest in new products for them. So it's always a balancing act in any sort of business to meet their deadlines as well as our deadlines. So it's an ongoing discussion. It's probably something I'm not quite a part of, so I can't really speak too much on it, unfortunately.
Right.
I'm more site-based, but it's definitely something that we just work together on a lot. But it's a slow journey, especially in the medical world.
Yeah. And Kirsty, then for you, you mentioned a little bit earlier about feeling that a lot of this is being driven by your customers. Have you had generally positive responses, or do people just generally not care, just as long as they get the good service, they don't mind whether you're sustainable or not?
No, our clients do care, and increasingly, so we do quite a lot of work for public sector, and public sector, there's something called the Social Value Act, and that actually sort of stipulates that suppliers need to be taking care of the environment and things. So yeah, absolutely very important to our public sector clients. And increasingly the whole ESG, environmental, social and governance agenda, I mean, it's really picked up momentum in the investment community over the last couple of years, and that's trickling down through the business community. So it's becoming much more of a hygiene factor to actually win business. And then also because we, do have quite a large environmental practice, and as I said, do work in the renewable energy sector, it's really important that we kind of walk the talk and we're aligned, knowing what we do internally with that service offering.
Do you find that the company's being asked to justify or to prove its sustainability credentials when it might be going tendering for a contract or going to a potential client?
Yes, absolutely. So having the ISO 14001 accreditation is important. Having commitments around net zero is important, being part of certain bodies. So we were founding members of the Legal Sustainability Alliance. We get asked to participate in things like the Carbon Disclosure Project. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Helen, how about you? Do you find, because obviously as you explained to us earlier, you're supplying a lot of outlets like motorway service areas, so you're in some respects a lot of your business is B2B, correct me if I'm wrong, but how about that? Do you find that you're getting that question from potential clients or the people you supply saying, and how are your sustainability credentials?
I think it is definitely when we work, if you look in terms of our clients, our customers, as we said, it's the Westmoreland services. So those, if you've ever been to T-Bay, the Gloucester services, they have environmental and social ethos wrapped within everything they do. Same with the co-ops that we supply to. You can see in terms of us having a mutual respect in what we do and what they do. And it's actually just as important to us in terms of who we sell our product to, as the same way for them in terms of our credentials as well. So it's very much a mutual benefit that we all work to these levels to continue to improve our environmental and social impacts. And I think it is something that we will, the clients that we work with now, the customers we work with now, I think it does show in terms of the actual end customer when they come up to the shelves, that they can see that this is a true farm, it's a true local business, and it is an eco farm. You can go to your larger supermarkets and you can see all types of things named farm, and it's not actually a farm, it's a brand, and it's a business that has no relation to the earth in which that product is created, and we don't have that. And we want people, when they pick up our product, whether it's our vegan pasties or our meat-based sausage rolls, we want them to know that we know exactly where our products come from, and they should get that as soon as they pick it up. They should be able to feel it, they should be able to see it, and they should be able to taste it. And I think that's why people keep coming back to our products. So both in terms of the people who stock our products and also the end customer. We have many people who say they deliberately divert on the M5 to the Gloucester services just to pick up our products, and it's a lovely thing to hear. And I think people can feel that quality in the product that comes with championing environmental aspects of the business.
And do you feel, it's interesting you referred to other so-called farms actually just being brands. Do you think that there's something of a problem here around the communication or the perception? Because I do know people going, well, how do I know something really is sustainable? Yeah,
and I think it's a very complex thing, and farming itself is a very complex topic. I myself eat a huge amount of vegetarian and vegan food and have very little meat, and that's my choice. But I work in a company that makes some of the best meat products, I think, in the UK. And we do it in a sustainable way, and people are always going to want to buy these kind of products. And I think we need to teach people to understand, we know every farm that our meat comes from, and it's all local. We know exactly where it's been in order to get into our products. And most people have no understanding of that. One of the things we do at a very, very small scale is the local primary school sends children to come to our farm. and they get to learn, where does food come from? And so many children just don't have that understanding. And if you don't understand where your food comes from, how can you make conscious decisions to better evaluate the products that are on the shelf? You can go to a supermarket and there's two types of, for example, of meat or you know, in products in front of you. How do you evaluate which is actually better for the environment? If you're going to go and look for fish, for example, how do you know what countries should you be looking for that fishing is done? What's the system that they should be catching that fish, because it has the lowest impact? If you're going to eat that product, how do you make sure it has the lowest impact? So there is a huge education thing around this whole topic. But I think people are learning, people are questioning. You know, the public is becoming a lot more intelligent on these things, and at that point we want the intelligent customer to come and see our product and say, yes, that's the one I want to buy, because I've learned about environmental impact and I know I can trust this product to be doing its absolute best in everything it can to champion sustainable ethos.
I mean, how do we deal though with the big companies that have got the big budgets for PR and branding, whatever? Because a lot of the time when people go into, say, a supermarket, they want to just, well, there have been lots environmental psychology has been a new development in the psychological research world for about 10-15 years, and there's all sorts of fascinating research coming out about people's reaction to environmental messages and what you need to say to people to persuade them to become greener. And one interesting research project I saw was showing how we make decisions in different ways to, say, other countries. So, for example, in Germany, people will do a lot of research themselves. They'll look into the company, they'll research the website, they read customer reviews, things like that. Whereas in England, we like the places where we buy our goods and our food to have done that choice editing, as it's called, for us. So that if something on the shelf says, right, this is sustainable, we go, all right, okay, right, I'm going to have that then. And we don't want to do all that background research. You know, how do we get over that problem with a lot of companies going, yeah, this is sustainable, yeah, all our meat's great, it's from great farms. Actually, it might not be.
I think it's what we're finding is we have to stay one step ahead, because I genuinely believe that compared to some of your other kind of sausage roll or that kind of food on the go products, we are well ahead of them. But if you go on their website, some of the things that they might say, you'd be like, oh, they sound very similar to what a small company like Cinder Hill Farm can do. But we can make those guarantees, but how do we persuade people about that? And it's about staying ahead. One of the things that we're looking at that we would like to do is to get Corporation B accreditation. I don't know if people have heard of that. It's a really good international accreditation around environmental and social impact of a business. And that's the kind of thing people want. You know, they look for the sticker on the side to say something is assured by, as you say, by someone in the government or someone in the business, or, you know, someone in the supermarket. They've put a sticker on it to say that you meet that standard. And we need to be able to keep up with that. So that's, for example, one of the things we'd like to target is the need to stay ahead of that. And I think a lot of information's online. We definitely see us needing to do, for example, you know, we have websites and we use social media, but there's always more we can do, and we can connect with more people. And I think the more people who see it on a personal level, you know, if you connect via social media, you'll see members of our teams working, you know, out on the farms or being able to work with the local suppliers, and you can see that we're real people doing real actions. And so that's really important to us, is to get that message out and to have those multiple platforms to tell that story.
Nick, obviously with the Wave, you've got your customers coming to you. You're really face to face with your target audiences. I mean, do you find really positive, people find that the whole experience of being at the Wave is enhanced because they know of your green credentials?
I think somewhat, not much yet, because I don't think we massively celebrate it yet. I think because it's been a real start-stop way we've been operating over the last 18 months, is that we've not really been able to get momentum on that journey, really. So that's all coming. And I definitely think that at the moment, if our customers want to just scratch the surface, they'll see those sustainable credentials there and embedded in the company, which is good. But maybe taking it back, right back to, getting seed capital for building what we've built. We definitely got particularly from the social aspect, we definitely got a lot of the seed capital to get this whole thing built through our credentials in terms of the way we want to do business. I think planning, South Gloucester Council really have entrusted us to do the right thing. And we set out very clear in our DNA in terms of why we want to be this future-facing business. And we've been entrusted from the council perspective to deliver across those objectives, which we feel that burden to do that, and it's really good thing to do. Our local community are expecting us to do the right thing, and I guess creating the right culture as an employer. We've got great people working for us, and the reason why they want to work for us is because of those sustainable credentials and the way we're wanting to be a better business. So I think the words that resound across all the panelists is around trust. I think trust is such an important part in terms of building a brand, building an organization. Is if you're trusted, then that's so important. And the other thing is caring, just caring about people, planet, the things that we really care about, and that comes across then in customer facing scenarios, but also investment facing scenarios and supply chain investment, supply chain environments. Trust and care is probably the most important values for a company.
And in terms of being able to easily portray your green credentials to your customers, do you find it a bit frustrating that maybe there isn't one sort of mark, apart from, as Helen mentioned, the B Corporation mark?
Mm-hmm.
That you find? Do you think customers would find it easier if you just had one sort of logo that you could stamp on everything, and people go, okay, yeah, we know then that they're greener?
Yeah, I mean, we're just literally going through the final throes of B Corporation accreditation right now. But really, I think it's really important for, to again show that sort of trust. We've been externally validated that we're a trustworthy, whether it's going through an ISO process or a B Corp process. I also still have a little bit of a problem with having accreditation of any kind in terms of making sure that you're actually living and breathing the values that you're wanting to install in a company. So I think it's good that you can very quickly externally validate something because you've got a mark or you've got a certificate or what have you. But far more important is around that sort of walking the talk, the way that you engage with people, the human face of what sustainability looks like, rather than just creating a mark, creating a logo and an ego that goes with it. It's more than that. It's a bit of external validation, but also you should be able to go into that company and really feel that you're living and breathing sustainability in a lens that your every decision's being made. So for instance, council, massive councils, like really, big struggles to be able to, particularly with ever cutting targets and finances. But actually, if you're able to change a mindset of a whole organization to just go, right, what's the impact of that decision I'm going to make today on social and environmental problems, then I think that that's the way that we can embed it in society rather than just as an organization. And I relish the challenge of that. I think it would be great if we can nail that.
We've got a question from a member of our audience, from Stephanie, and I think you probably partly answered that yourself, which says, how important is it that you can prove your green credentials to your customers? For example, having a certificate that says you're carbon neutral.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's important for some people, but fundamentally you get trust through a reputation of delivering against those credentials that that are there. And thankfully, we did a lot of research around B Corp, and I think B Corp is a very trusted community that it's a trusted accreditation. But fundamentally, it should just be like a benchmarking exercise to then go, right, how can we improve right the way through our organisation? And I think that then starts to build that trust, that caring attitude that then creates customer loyalty, loyalty across all stakeholders. And I think then we'll create a whole bunch of opportunities in the future by being a trusted organisation. And certainly from our point of view, we've already been approached by other councils who want us to come and do the same thing that we're doing in South Gloucestershire, because they know that we could be trusted. So yeah, there's a responsibility that comes with that. But I don't think that that's necessarily on a single mark, but it can be useful. It's, yeah, as I say, it's about walking the talk.
Yeah. So obviously creating great commercial opportunities for you.
Yeah, exactly.
For the future, as well as the immediate present as well. Barry, the council, obviously, I mean, you represent the whole swathe of the public. How do you find that the public, if you can give it that broad term, what response do you find? Do you find it actually creates better conversations and relationships with the public, who are the recipients of your council services?
Yeah, definitely. And I touched on before in terms of how we've seen that change in attitude since the kind of early 2000s, when we were all touching on sustainability back in the late 90s and early 2000s, to now, where it was definitely trying to push water uphill back in those times. But now there's almost a greater expectation that the council is going to not just lead by example, but enable others to actually take the right actions and inspire others to take the right action. And that's very much how our Climate Emergency Action Plan is divided up between lead, enable and inspire, recognising that we've got a role as a council to do things in terms of our own organisation, but then enabling others in terms of, Nick's mentioned, they needed planning permission for the wave. It's located in the Greenbelt. And actually it's getting the council to see beyond the obvious say no approach and actually look at the broader social outcomes that things like the wave starts to deliver. And then the inspired bit is the real tricky one in working with the public. The big area that we're having trouble getting any real movement on is the domestic met retrofit. So how are existing homes going to be actually converted to become carbon or become 2050 ready or net zero 2050 ready? And what does it take to change the public's mind to invest in upping the energy performance of their individual homes? And as you mentioned, Caroline, there's lots of kind of scientific evidence coming out in terms of behavioural change theories and why previous approaches haven't sought that personal investment into people adapting their own homes. So that's the one I think which is as a broad society we've still got to crack. And I think in terms of linking back into those economic opportunities that I mentioned before, if we can manage to get those individual homeowners on board to take those difficult financial decisions to invest in their own homes, then it starts to actually open up significant opportunities for commercial investment in providing the goods and services to allow those houses to be transformed to a 2050 compatible home. But how we do that, answers on a postcard. I've been at it for probably, too many years, 15 years, trying to get a significant shift in that. And you do get some pockets of really good engagement from some homeowners. But still there's 80-90% of those homeowners which is still an uphill battle to try and get that engagement. And that's the mix of the council having a kind of a regulatory role and an inspiring or enabling role. And I think that's where government is as well, in that a lot of this stuff is going to be required to be embodied in a legislative approach, whether it's through building regulations or planning permissions. And so there's that twin hat that the council wears of both trying to lead, enable and inspire, but at the same time being the enforcers of that national regulation. And it's quite often those different hats are conflicting and do cause a bit of mistrust with the communities in which we work.
It must be difficult. You're trying to be the carrot and the stick at the same time.
Absolutely.
Which is going back to what Nick said. I mean, that feeling of trust is a really important one, particularly for helping to push forward behaviour change and people adapting to a different way of doing things. So that must be quite difficult. Do you think people view the council as they think these are things the council should be doing, but then when it comes to themselves, they almost think, well, actually, we're a different situation, we're a completely different, category to the council. So they're very quick to point the finger at you, but then don't actually look in the mirror as well.
Yes, to a certain extent. I think what we've seen with various approaches over the years is almost a culture of dependency that's built up, in that it's the council's job to sort this stuff out for us, and we need to move away from that kind of that culture to one that they're not waiting for financial support to come from the council. They're not waiting for the council to actually come up with the magic solution that sorts the problems out, because as our climate emergency declaration says, it's supporting the community to become carbon neutral. So the council isn't accepting that it's the sole bastion of setting that carbon neutrality target. It's us actually leading and enabling and inspiring a community to hit that 2030 target. So we can't do it by ourselves. And I think councils who are out there who are saying that they can do it by themselves, I think as we get into the later 2020s, they're going to be up against it, because if it's just left to local government to sort out, we are not going to sort it out.
Just going back to Stephanie's question for a minute, how important do you think it is for the council to be able to prove its green credentials to your customers, to the public, for having something like a certificate that says you're carbon neutral? Does that help build that trust at all?
I think it does. In a way, it works more the other way around, in terms of we're setting standards quite high in terms of our procurement strategies. So the businesses that we choose to employ to provide services on our behalf, we're expecting them to be able to show those credentials. And in doing that, they'll be wanting to make sure that the council itself has the ability to demonstrate its green credentials. And we're looking at, we've got ISO accreditation, we're looking at ISO accreditation for adaptation as well as mitigation. But some of the ISO standards, to most of the public, they don't mean a lot. It's okay to business level, but if you're trying to go and fix somebody's house or fix a hole in the road, probably 99% of the public don't actually care. They just want to see it done and see it done right. So it depends who you're having that discussion with in terms of the value of being able to demonstrate your environmental credentials. Part of me, it's not just actually seeing the credentials as a badge of honour. It's actually making sure that the organisation is working as one. And a lot of the ISO standards require that length and breadth connection across the whole of the organisation. So right from the chief executive down to the person on the front desk, making sure that they're living and breathing the requirements of those ISO standards. And that's the importance for me. So it's not just necessarily demonstrating business to business, it's making sure for me that I've got a pulse on the organisation, and I can demonstrate that the organisation is living and breathing as one.
Kirsty, do you find having some way of proving your sustainability credentials, do you have that at the moment? And if you don't, would it help?
So yeah, we do get asked particularly by clients to sort of prove sustainability credentials, and yeah, so being part of things like the Legal Sustainability Alliance, having the ISO accreditations, making certain pledges. But I think it's also important, as Nick said, it is about the values and the culture, and you're much more judged on your actions and what you actually do rather than the badge. But for us, I think it's important to have both. Yes,
for customers, you can say we're green, we're saving energy, we're reducing carbon dioxide emissions, but how essentially do they know at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, what I have been pleased to see is some of the standards are getting more challenging for businesses now, which is great, and it's a real move in the right direction.
Great. John, can I just move to you? I've had a question from a member of the audience, from Zoe. She says that within manufacturing business, where would be the lower hanging fruit to prove sustainability can be cost effective?
I think it kind of goes back to some of Barry's points. It's getting people to start understanding what green means, what things can they do in their day-to-day roles that could impact it. For example, for us, is the operator on the shop floor aware of when he's wasting some material because it's bad? What can he do to mitigate that? Can he change that? Can he improve that? Understanding what we can do on an everyday basis, whether it's using right bins and things like that. What low-hanging fruit, such as air leaks, do you have around your manufacturing facility that you can fix? Those little small changes add up to quite big impact. And I think that's probably the ethos of what we've been doing over the last sort of 5 to 6 years. Has been a lot about that low-hanging fruit first. And then once we've got that, then we can start to move on to the bigger challenges, especially in a manufacturing environment. It's quite busy and complex, so you can always move on to the next thing. But as long as the people are behind you, you can do whatever you need to.
So would you say that some of the low-hanging fruits actually around behaviour change, around attitude change, about how people do their job from day to day? Yeah,
definitely. Presenting them the data that sort of shows what impacts that 1 kilo of waste has over the longer term if they do that every day. The power of data is also probably something that goes back to green credentials like you were talking about earlier. What are you, and we know Barry was talking about before, we don't want to go into too much technical jargon here, but like the different types of greenhouse gas types that we produce as well. What is that trend over the long term? How's it adding up, and what can we do on a daily basis to improve that? Like giving people the information is the most important thing, and the insights.
That falls onto a question we've had from Simon. He's pointing out that sustainability has been around for a long time. I've been working in the sector for 34 years. He's been dealing with it for over 25 years for land and property proposals and environmental issues and policy. And he says to him, in the early days particularly, it always seemed to be something that came top down, and so possibly not fully taken up, whereas now it seems to be a lot more bottom up, and he's wondering why you think that change might be. John, just following on from what you said with your
sorry. Well, I guess it's the changing world, the media. The world's a lot more connected now. I guess in the last year especially, we've had a lot of different riots, especially in Bristol, around climate action especially. So I think it's just that awareness and the power of things like social media. I think that's changing that bottom-up approach. And as new generations come along, they're seeing things of what they want to improve. That's probably, I'm not probably the best answer to that, but that's the best I can think of.
Certainly with schools, you know, I have a 15-year-old daughter, you know, and I find that a lot of those younger people have been learning about it in school. You know, they simply have that degree now in environmental knowledge that was never around en masse when I started out in the sector. I went into sustainability because it was a subject I was interested in, and I learned myself, and I made the effort of finding out what was happening. Helen, just going back to the low-hanging fruit for businesses and manufacturing businesses, you know, what would your advice be around looking at what the low-hanging fruit is?
I think for me, I would suggest 2 key areas, your energy use and your physical waste. The reason for suggesting those 2, again, obviously being it's things that people can see. When it comes to physical waste, it's something they can see an actual change happening. And between that and energy, it's something we understand from at home. It doesn't matter if you're an operator or if you're a senior exec in a business, you run a home, you understand physical waste and you understand energy. So let's apply it to a business. So I would say for all businesses, these are 2 key areas you could look at. From the energy point of view, as a minimum, getting certified renewable energy in terms of your power, but also then looking at things like PV, air source heat pumps, all of those things. There's a lot of information out there. Although that's more expensive, it's something that you can look at. There is a lot of accessible information. And then the other thing would be your physical waste, because it doesn't matter if you're in an office or if you're in a manufacturing environment, we all create a lot of waste, and it's something that everyone can get involved in. So if you want a topic to get everyone on top of, that's what I would do. I would get everyone, for example, for a week to look at the amount of waste you create. And that's not just the paper going into the bin, it's the ink that you're printing on that paper. It's every bit of plastic that you unwrap. Maybe you get a roll of sellotape that's got a load of outside packaging on it, everything. Where is all this waste coming from? And what are your priorities for reducing that? And that's both in terms of the waste you create as part of your manufacturing or your business processes, and that just come in terms of everything. You know, a business runs on so many suppliers arriving to your door, and we have a need, and we have a kind of a responsibility, I guess, to go back to some of our suppliers and say, actually, I think you can do this better. So for me, those would be the two areas. I'd say all businesses, regardless of if you're office or services or if you're in manufacturing, energy and physical waste should be things that everyone can understand, and I think would be an excellent starting point.
And have you noticed, why have you noticed more of a bottom-up demand, going back to Simon's question, rather than top-down? And
yeah. I think that's an interesting question. There's two sides of it for me. I am of the YouTube watching generation. I follow a lot of influencers in terms of sustainability. It's what I will go to if I'm sat waiting for something to do or someone to turn up. I will go to very set YouTubers who have sustainability channels. It's what I do. So it does mean I'm very critical of everything, because I suddenly have a lot of knowledge on a very wide range of topics, which before I would have had to have done huge amounts of reading on. So I think there's that side of it. We have a lot more information, and we have a lot of opinions given to us. You know, I can watch a social media influencer on YouTube who says, change your shampoo from plastic to these type of bars or whatever, and these are the best with their sustainable. I can go around and now I can have an opinion because I've watched a 5-minute video on it. And I've changed it, and I've followed that because I believe that's the right thing to do. And I think generally people have that feeling, and more people consumer-wise are coming through who are saying, actually, I don't want to act like this. I've seen that there's an alternative and I can do it. So I think that's one side of it. I think the other side is actually quite cynical in terms of very large corporations finding it as a very good way of taking some responsibility away. I've made your plastic bottle recyclable. It's not my fault if you don't actually recycle it, rather than I'm going to create a new type of bottle that biodegrades in a year's time, and I'm going to take as responsibility as a huge company. I think there is a cynical side to it. I think it is very large organizations pushing back and saying, well, if you're not going to do your small action, why should I do my big one? And actually, that's not how it should be. And I think you're hearing today from businesses who feel they have a responsibility, and that every business should be taking that responsibility to help consumers have that choice. And it's a two-way street. And actually, if the consumers say, oh, there's something wrong, or I want something different, and the businesses can provide that something different, we'll meet in the middle and we'll actually meet these environmental challenges. And we can't have just a bottom up or a top down. It needs to have both of those groups meeting in the middle.
Yeah, Nick, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just expanding on that really. I think that this is a generational thing. Just very generally, we've got younger people at the grassroots of organisation who are far more savvy on the world, I think, in terms of their environmental and social responsibilities. I think when you look at the sort of top down, or people at the top, particularly in big organizations, they're in charge of massive budgets, probably got sort of big shareholder responsibilities, and they're put in those positions because they've got the experience, probably 20, 30, 40 years experience at that, in that space, but have created that experience with these kind of agendas, not really, that's not something that has been, even talked about probably 30 years ago. So there is a real, I've got real hope that generationally it's going to get better and better, because actually people like myself and people younger than me, I'm no spring chicken, are able to then influence at the very, very top level, and be able to create that change, and not having to just rely on the odd, I don't know, 20, 30 people who are right at the top of the game. People like who I'm inspired by, people like Yvonne Chouinard, who runs Patagonia, who, he must be late 70s, early 80s, but absolutely has embraced that sustainability thinking in his organization. So people like that inspire me, but then hopefully I'll be able to inspire many other people, and so it trickles down. But at the moment, I think big business still, the people at the top still, there's work to be done there still.
Yes. My daughter surprised me the other day when we were at the table eating our evening meal, and she was saying, oh yeah, well, we Gen Z, we really don't like you baby boomers. And as I'm a baby boomer, I went, what? Sorry? I said, why? She said, yeah, because you wrecked the planet for us. We don't like you. And I went, oh, hold on a minute, not all of us are. Please don't tar us all with the same brush. But yeah, as you say, there's that definite generational thing, and the younger generations just are so much more aware, know so much. I'm always amazed about what she knows, not just about the environment, but about current affairs, because they are all the time connected now through social media to news and what's happening. Kirsty, have you noticed a particular sort of like movement from the bottom up sort of driving the sustainability agenda in Burgess Salmon?
Yes, definitely. So with our apprentices and our trainee intake, they're always asking questions, when we go through the interview rounds and things. They want to know what we did. There was also a push to participate in something called the Chancery Lane Project. And the Chancery Lane Project is a legal sector initiative where lawyers are using their legal expertise to provide sort of best practice guidance, how climate action can be embedded within contracts and agreements and things, and also model legislation. And it's definitely the sort of younger ones who have been pushing for that. So yes.
Do you find, as Nick was suggesting, that it is now both, though it's top down as well as bottom up?
Yeah, and I think the whole, agenda is becoming a lot more mainstream, and, and some of us have been working in this space for a long time, and sort of Simon's 25 years, it's not new, I think, but also because things are becoming a lot more pressing now, in the conversation we had earlier, we're not going to be on track for the 1.5, the 2 degree warming. So, we all need to take action, and that message is getting through at all levels. So yeah, top and bottom.
Great. Can I just throw out to all of you panelists to answer? I've got another question from Stephanie. I'm not quite sure who might be best to answer this. She says, do any of your companies have their carbon footprint calculated to understand where their emissions come from and where to target reductions? Anybody like to take that one? Barry, do you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing it since 2011. It started off as a mandatory requirement for local government to measure its carbon emissions, and then disappeared for a while. It's still not a mandatory expectation, but it's something that we do, as I've mentioned, using the greenhouse gas protocol and splitting it up between scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. And actually, it's really easy to do. It sounds really complex, but it's really easy to do. If you've got your hands on the data in terms of what your energy consumption is, what your gas consumption is, even what your waste, if you're measuring your waste tonnage, if you're measuring your vehicle mileage, you can do a greenhouse gas protocol 1 and 2 pretty easily. Go online, look at the carbon factors on government websites. You can download the carbon factors, you can stick that against your tons of waste or your kilowatt hours of electricity used, and you can produce your own greenhouse gas protocol emission. And I think it's the fundamental starting point, is understanding where your emissions are arising from. And once again, that starts to identify the lower hanging fruit based on that data that you can get access to. And I've been into numerous councils up and down the country and consistently surprised in terms of that most of them don't have a very good grip on their data. and therefore if they've not got a good grip on that data, they can't start to inform their action plan and start to tick off those lower hanging and profitable fruit as part of their early years of actions. So yes, we do it. It's what drives us as an organisation to look at those internal emissions. We've got a carbon management team, which is a virtual team of officers from around the authority that come together, look at the actions and look at the savings both in carbons and shillings and pence that are going to come from those actions. So it's our fundamental starting point and what drives us as an organisation.
Great. Well, we've almost run out.
To make those changes.
Right. Deb, did you just want to have you put your hand up? Just one quick. Would you have
very quick point? That is that as a consumer, I get an awful lot of information before I purchase an item on its green qualities. As a business, it's very hard to get that information. There's no statutory requirement yet. If I buy a very large freezer or a very large piece of three-phase machinery, to get information in advance on how much it's going to use. So that's just a cry that, you know, as a business community, can we begin collectively to put some more pressure on suppliers to provide that information?
Well, I'm afraid that does bring us to the end. It's been a fascinating discussion. Yeah, and we could go on for hours, couldn't we? But I'm afraid we have to draw it to a close at 11:15, which is rapidly approaching. Thank you very much to the audience. Thank you very much for joining us today, and meaning that we just didn't have to sit and talk amongst ourselves. That's greatly appreciated. If you have any questions that suddenly occur to you after the event, please feel free to send them to me, to email them to me. I've put my contact details in the chat box, and you will all get a copy of the chat box after this event. As I said at the start of the forum today, this recording will also be made available on YouTube, along with the recordings of all of the Business Insight Festival sessions. So do look out for that. They should be made available in the next week or so. So just a big thank you to the panelists for today for giving up their valuable time, to John Bradbury, Continuous Improvement Manager at Amcor, Nick Hounsfield, who's founder of The Wave, Barry Wyatt, who's Climate Emergency Manager at South Gloucestershire Council, to Kirsty Greenman, Head of Corporate Sustainability at Burgess Salmon, and Helen McGloin, Head of Advancement for the Pie House. And also thank you to Lisa Sweeting, who's been our technical guru, keeping us on the keeping the digital show on the road. Yeah, thank you very much to everybody. We do have more events in the festival today. Go to the website www.business-shows.co.uk/business-insights. Remember that. And our next festival will actually be on the 19th and 20th of May. So look out for publicity on LinkedIn about that one. So thank you very much again to the participants and to the audience for a fascinating session today, and have a successful day today.